Thank you for joining us on this special edition of Behind the Blue. I'm Cody Kaiser with UK Public Relations and Strategic Communications. I'm joined by UK's Chief Communications Officer, Jay Blanton. And this week, our guest is once again UK's Executive Vice President for Finance and Administration, Dr. Eric N. Munday. Eric, thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Cody.
This week, we've started building a framework for how our future may take shape here at the university heading into the fall. Part of that involved a meeting this morning as we record this with our deans, where we had 3 teams that gave presentations on how that all could possibly work, and then the process moves on from there. So tell us a little bit about what all of this looks like at this point.
Yeah, so thanks, Cody. It was a great morning. So we had 3 scenario planning teams, Team Blue, Team White, and Team Wildcat, led by Sue, Anna, and Katie, present to the deans. They presented to the Emergency Operations Center yesterday and looked at how they built concept plans or concept papers around how we achieve, as an institution, a safe and reinventing normal restart. And so we were able to share that with the deans this morning and get some great feedback from the deans. And as we think about those next steps, I mean, today is really step 2 of this multi-step process of, as we're moving towards mid-June and communicating broadly to the campus and to the community, specifically our safe and reinvent normal restart for the fall.
Can you talk a little bit about, why don't you walk us through that process now that we're going to go through, and what are the sort of contingency plans that we're looking at as the institution shoots for reopening in what we call reinvented or reimagined normal soon?
So it's about 10 steps, Jay. And if we look through those steps, step 1 was when we appointed the teams. We're in step 2 now. And then what we'll do over the next day and a half is we'll take those concept papers. So it was really important to have this parallel concept. So these 3 teams worked independent of each other. And so then they built these concept papers based on various ways in which we can restart in the fall, whether it's a normal calendar, whether it's a hybrid calendar, where it maybe is all online, even though that's not clearly what we want to do. We have to prepare, and we have to think about, and we have to be willing to respond to all these different unknowns. And so they worked, and then what we'll do is we'll take those papers, consolidate them, and then beginning on Wednesday evening into Thursday and Friday, we're going to push those to the campus. And so the campus will have an opportunity to look at those documents, to hear the presentations that were made in about 15 minutes this morning by each one of those teams, so 45 minutes or so of presentations, and then provide this robust feedback cycle. We believe more is more, as you tell me, Jay. We believe in a big table. We want more input. We believe in a process that is going to yield to a better outcome. More is better. It's almost like diversification 101. And so then we'll take those 3 concept papers, we'll take all that campus feedback, and we'll build it into one document. And that final concept paper, if you will, then what we'll do is we'll present it to university leadership. So we'll present it to the president, his senior leadership team for deliberation, discussion. And then at that point, we really move to step 6, if you will. And if we look at step 6, it's approved. We have a document, and then we take a little pause, if you will, and we then say, hey, what's the next phase? And Jay, if you want to talk about the next phase, or me to continue on that. Okay.
Absolutely.
So when we look at the next phase, is we have this final concept paper. And then what we say is, okay, let's go to the circle. If you think about the diagram, Cody, and that circle diagram that we've used, and we say, okay, well, we have these EOC work streams. We have 19 of them. So, it's hundreds of people. I think if you look at all of the folks involved in this, we're well in the neighborhood of 400, almost over 500 now, different individuals across the campus, which is fantastic to have that much input, even before we put it on the web for input, which I think will get hundreds and hundreds of more comments. And so what we do at that point is then we push that concept paper out to those 19 EOC work streams, plus the START work group. And of course, that START work group is essential because it's talking about screening and testing and tracing and isolation and quarantine and how we ensure that we achieve that first term safe. It's not about just reinventing normal. It's how we are safe in reinventing normal. So we'll use that process. Once that moves through, and that'll take, let's say, a week or so, maybe a week and a half. So we're moving through May, maybe middle May, maybe we're closing in on the end of May. We get to step 8. And that's where we have a campus restart plan. Then once again, there's a second opportunity for the campus to provide input. So the great website, the great work that y'all do in university relations and public relations and marketing and so on, we'll take that, we'll post it, another opportunity for input. And then we move to step 9. We take all that input, we take all the feedback that we've received, and we have a final draft of that restart plan. It's considered by university leadership. So let's say it's end of May, maybe we're even into early June. And then once that final campus restart plan is approved, then it's communicated. So we get to, let's call it, as you know, Jay, because of one of your messages to the campus, mid-June is what we're targeting. We're not going to race to a date. We're going to trust a process, but we're going to target a date. And clearly that's our target. We want to give our students some understanding of what the future is and what exactly our modality is going to be and how we reinvent normal. And so that's kind of the overview, if you will, of this multi-step process.
This really does seem like kind of the almost the only way I could see to do this is to bring this many eyes in on this because of the amount of just the volume of pieces that are going into this. You have undergraduate education and you have research and you have the healthcare aspect of it and you have athletics, and there's so many moving pieces and parts. Not to mention, like you said, all of the screening and testing and all of the things that we have to work hand in glove with our healthcare professionals to make sure that this is the safest possible path that we take.
Yeah, Cody, and you make a great point. So if we look at that other slide and we look at that particularly, you see this blue middle dot, and we talk about the president, the health work group, the EOC, the work streams, but we're learning from what's outside that dot. To your point, healthcare, we started yesterday, Monday, we started really week 3 of our restart. Our patient volume is up. We're doing outpatient procedures this week. We're doing appropriate testing before we do those outpatient procedures to keep our patients safe, to keep our healthcare professionals safe. Research restart is ongoing. We're taking a draft plan. Dr. Cassis, our Vice President of Research, is communicating and pushing that across campus for feedback. We'll probably be ready to launch that in the next week or so. So another opening of the spigot, if you will, right? More people starting to come to the campus in a safe environment, get that research engine. Why is that important? Because we're doing active research on COVID. And so how do we engage that? How do we respond to the governmental need? How do we understand how we can best position this academic health system that we have, our academic medical center, our AMC, is a critical component. And it's an advantage for us as we think about how we're going to reinvent normal. We want to be in a position where our parents are saying, it's the safest place for my son or daughter to go is at the University of Kentucky, because they have a strategy and they've thought through this. They've trusted a process. They thought through the different modalities and challenges and how we overcome that. But you're right, Cody, we have healthcare, we have research, and then we have our departments. Athletics is thinking about their restart. Housing is thinking about their restart. Facilities is thinking about how they space the classrooms differently. Our student center, our Gatton Student Center, is looking at how we space furniture out, dining, and on and on and on. And so as they're working, we have this team concept working, and then we start to bring it all together to build this operational implementation plan that we can announce in June.
And I'm thinking that there's a lot of consideration as well with, like you said, our parents and our current students, our incoming students, as to what their expectations are, what they think about as far as, I mean, they're making a financial commitment to these parents and these students to come to this university. We talked a lot of this morning in that meeting. I heard a lot of talk about what the fall semester looks like. Do we do so many weeks and then we, do we end at a certain point? How do we break this up? Do we provide, how do we provide a safe environment as far as spacing? How do we provide things like PPE and things like that for our students to have if they need it? So I imagine that's a big consideration there, just like separating the actual campus workforce, but also taking in the external part of parents and students as well.
Yeah, and so we've already taken some steps. So we have a strategy in how we manage an incident command and incident response at the university. If we see things that we believe we're going to need, act now. And so we've done that as it relates to what we bought for our students, as it relates to iPads and MiFi devices, and we're continuing that. So we looked at our classroom capabilities about 2 weeks ago and determined there was 100 or so classrooms that we could add additional capability so we could stream audio and video at the same time where we're recording or you have the live interaction. So we authorized ITS, our Information Technology Services, to proceed, get those classrooms ready for the fall. We may not use them in that way, but why not in some ways, like Mark Stoops used to talk about, right? Why not do that? So that's it. Yesterday we bought 40,000 masks to be prepared for when our students, faculty, and staff return. We're producing, as we already have talked about, all our hand sanitizer in a vertical way. And so we're proceeding on that to order as much as we need of hand sanitizer because we're producing it right down the street. Can we be vertical? Can we use the College of Design to make a product that dispenses that hand sanitizer? So we're having those conversations. Can we use our business partners to help us to understand those type of components? But if we can take it off the table, let's take it off the table. How do we think about wipes and other materials that our students and faculty and staff are going to need? So yes, our focus is safety for our students. It's safety for our faculty. It's safety for our staff. It's our visitors, our fans, our patients, or so on. And it is across that enterprise. We understand it is a giant commitment. In some ways, your higher education costs may be the number one or number two largest financial commitment you make in your life outside of maybe your house. And so how do we ensure that we're responding to that? We know one thing that is for certain. Our students want to be back on campus in a residential, rich experience of learning that is intrusive in a positive way, that is committed, and that is in an environment where they can challenge and to encourage and to be better and develop as citizens. And so that's what we're working towards, and that's what we're marching towards. It may be a little bit different, right? We may be still doing some Zooms. We may be in a classroom where it's only 50% capacity, and maybe the A through L is in class on Monday and M through Z is in class on Wednesday. That's okay, because it's about the process of getting back to that reinvented normal and how best can we support that and how best can we achieve it.
Got kind of a process question. So I take your point that we're not racing to a date, but there is sort of a finite time frame we've got. If the goal is to get back to normal and have that fall residential research campus, you got a date. You do have it's flexible a little bit, but there's a date out there. At the same time, this is a hugely complex institution that you just kind of outlined for us, all these variables. How does the process that we've created and that you and the president have created to make these decisions, how does it balance that you got to move quickly, but you got to be comprehensive, and you got to think about safety first, and the health and well-being, that priority that you all articulate all the time? Is the process designed in such a way you think to try to be both expeditious but also balance all those complex variables? I mean, it's just the effort that's going on here and all the people that are involved with eyeballs on different things just strikes me as so complex, but yet also there's this imperative to get, I take your point about not raising, but there's an imperative to get it done because there is a date looming out there.
And so we go back to the principles, Jay, and those are what's going to frame us. And so it's the health and safety, it's over communicating, it's being in a situation where we're focused on ongoing operations, it's serving all the different constituencies that we have. in a lot of ways we've said, because healthcare is never stopped, can't stop healthcare. And so we talk about, our patients, our healthcare employees, then we think about our students, our faculty and staff, and there's positive tension there, right? There's going to be positive tensions that we're going to have to overcome. Well, that produces a better outcome. Big table. So the more people you get involved, the longer it takes, to your point. But we put an eye on mid-June, and then we work backwards. And then we stay disciplined on that timeline. But we also show a willingness to pivot. And so if we think or we see situations where we don't think we're getting enough eyes on it, or we're hearing from people that say, hey, I want to have a time for input and I'm not on one of these groups, then what can we do? We can add some folks to the groups, which we've done. We can have more ways in which there's campus input. But, what are we racing towards? We're racing towards one thing. That's to be safe as possible, as safe as we can, and a focus on achieving that through reinventing normal operations, right? It's not a new normal. It's not normal. We take all that, but we're going to have to define our own destiny. And I think the other issue is the president said, we're going to move through this and we're going to come out of it thriving. We're going to accelerate out of this. And so that's also what we're putting our eyes on as well, is that how do we believe in the residential experience. We know from our students, it's what they want. And so we have to figure out some way. And here's a principle that I hold true, and it dates back to this being, I don't know, the 7th or 8th different type of incident that I've helped to be involved in my career in higher education. The surest thing to do is to not reopen. That's easy. And if we don't make a decision to get to a reinvented normal now, then when are you? What is going to be that trigger? So it's intriguing to me, and I think it's intriguing to all of us, some of these institutions that have already made decisions and already announced. I think that's really intriguing, because how do we go through a process to ensure we have a big table? We are a university, right? We are a group of skeptics that want to stress test and think through everything. And so we have to honor that. We're not a business. We have to follow a process. We have to have a big table. And we believe that's going to yield a better outcome. But how do we overcome that tension, Jay, is we hold ourselves accountable to some operating strategy around date discipline. And that's what I think we're doing in this process as well.
I don't want to prejudge the outcome, and I don't want to have you prejudge the outcome, but what are 2 or 3 of, if you had to kind of say, here are the things that make me and the president kind of keep us up at night, is the big questions, the big challenges that have to be answered and addressed. If you think about August 24th, pick a date, what would have been the normal start date for the fall semester, full in-class operations again. What are the 2 or 3 big challenges out there that most concern you, or that you think most about addressing?
Testing capability and capacity. I think that's a huge component. Reliability and ability to have access to that. Having an academic medical center gives us a leg up. We had conversations about that today. There are partners we're looking at that can provide as many as 10,000 tests a day. So if we wanted to move into an environment where we were testing every single faculty, staff, and student on some regular basis, let's call it once a week for the lack of a better understanding, do we have the capacity to collect it? Do we have the capacity to assess it? Do we have the capacity? Once we establish a protocol and a commitment, we have to honor that. So I think that's one. Number 2 is, are we going to be unequal as it relates to the desire to come back to a reinvented normal? So are we going to have this challenge with students wanting X, Y, and Z, and maybe our staff and faculty not seeing it the same way? And so how do we achieve that? How do we accommodate someone who's in a different health environment personally or within their family, or is of some age demographic that thinks or suggests that they're at a higher risk? And so how do we accommodate that? And so I think you accommodate that by having your eye on the long term. We're a community. We're a community of scholars. We're a community of people that support our students. And at a fundamental base core, our job is to help our students cross the stage to live a life of meaning and purpose, right? That is our core. So how do we support that? Well, that may mean for a semester or 2 of that career, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different, so we can maneuver our way through that. So how do we think about those kind of things? I mean, those are the top two that come to mind. Obviously, I guess from a third standpoint, and I'm not speaking for the president, I want to just speak for myself individually, it's that we are a factor of a financial engine. And so we have to build a robust, reinvented environment that also provides us with some level of financial stability, that we can see success, even if we have to see a little pause for 1 year, that we see more success in 2 or 3 or 5. Just because we think it is a possibility, there also has to be a financial equation that makes it possible. And so we are a very strong financial institution. We have some flexibilities others do not have, but at the same time, we have to have a revenue stream that supports those outcomes. We are a factor of what our students pay in tuition and fees. That's the driving support factor of this institution. Our state is a valued partner and provides about 6% of our budget, and that is an essential 6%. But that tuition and fee revenue, which is now more than double what we receive in revenue from our state, is essential for our success. So we have to achieve safe and reinvented normal. So there's a confidence in us that we can move through this and get to the finish line as we move through this pandemic.
It's important for people, I think, also to know that these plans don't just focus on the facilities and the financial aspect of returning to operations, but also, depending on how our semester looks, shorter number of weeks, possibly with an increased workload, or faculty that may be concerned about returning to the classroom and how they return to the classroom. We're also looking, and it's factored into this, we're also looking at increased stress and mental health impact as well, correct?
Exactly. And let's not lose sight of all the challenges that our students have already faced. So to your point, Cody, we're thinking of maybe a little prospective, but I want to move backwards. And our students, we have, some of us have families or kids. I mean, whether they're in K through 12 or in high school, or rather even in college, the stress level on these young people, we have to recognize that. And so how we build accommodations, whether it's our Disability Resource Center, how do we staff a mental health and a counseling department, how we think about our university health environment, how we think about all those outside the classroom experiences that our students desperately need. And if we still have more online classes, which we talk about multimodal delivery, you referenced some of that, Cody, earlier, the outside the classroom experiences, I think, are going to be even more essential and more important. What happens in that residence hall? What happens in we have 600, 700, 800 student organizations. How can we support their activities to continue to meet via Zoom? Or when you have a group of 50, maybe you're meeting in a ballroom rather than in a classroom that supports 50. How do we support those things? Because those outside the classroom experiences, because the inside may still be a little bit different as we move through the next semesters of this pandemic, I think are even more important. So yes, our student and academic life has done a lot of things in this spring. They're doing more things in the summer, and they're going to be prepared to accelerate in the fall. But I think you bring up an essential component. How we put our resources towards those things, critical. So how are we staffed in our Disability Resource Center? How are we staffed in our mental counseling and support services units? How we're supporting first generation students? How are we supporting students that are coming from certain backgrounds and have certain challenges that we need to help them overcome? Those are components that we have to consider and will consider in this planning process. And you heard some of those, of course, in what's already been done in the concept plans.
I think about, the idea too behind us getting this right, like how we do this, the steps that we take, and how to get this right, not just for us, but also I think about it in a larger context of you have, we're talking tens of thousands of people who work and attend the university. We are beyond campus in a sense, though, because you also have the Lexington community to think about as far as like all of the businesses that are impacted by this. You have students who are not going to restaurants, who are not going to the movies or shopping or things like that. And so getting it right for us, I think adds an additional responsibility of how our approach is to this, that we can hopefully be an example of how the rest of the community surrounding. And, I think about too, like when you think about research and things like that, our extension offices around the state, 120 counties, 120 extension offices, and how we get back to operations on our campus as far as research goes, and as far as how we respond to the needs of those offices, there's a lot that ties into that as well.
Definitely. A stretch goal for us, Cody, is to figure out a reinvented normal where we're thinking about screening and testing and tracing. And a stretch goal for us is that if we can get that down and we can manage it for our community, and you think about our community is 50,000, 60,000 on an average day when you bring in healthcare and patient loads and outpatient visits and so on. If we can get it right and figure out some strategies for success for 50 to 60,000, well, what about the other 300,000 in Lexington? And how do we think about how we support those activities? Our president is working with the mayor on a task force looking at restarting higher ed. And, one of the things we heard, Cody, of course, this morning, I think from all three groups, was the importance of K through 12. And so let's not lose sight in K through 12 and daycare and childcare for many of our employees have children. And how do they ensure that they feel that they're in a safe environment? You got to take care of the base. And so if they feel that their kids are in a safe environment, then it's going to allow them to commit and refocus on their work as well. But family is going to have to come first, and then work comes second. So how do we balance those things and respond to that? So yes, it's beyond us. And there's the economic impact that you referenced, and clearly there's a multiplier effect for that we're focused on and we're concerned about long term. And that's a macro impact, not just here in Lexington, of course, the entire economy of the United States. But if we go into a more narrow, there is a community aspect in Lexington. And to your point, we have a land grant mission. And that's to ensure that we have a presence in the 120 counties, and we're adding to the collective value of those counties. And so Nancy Cox and Dr. Cox does a wonderful job as our dean in that area. And how do we support those activities? Because when we're thinking about opening and closing, we're not just thinking even in Lexington. We got our 2 College of Medicine campuses as well. And then, of course, we have 120 counties. So yes, those are considerations. And I would anticipate that the cafe restart plan is extremely robust as well.
So I want to be mindful of your time. Fast forward, a month from now or so, relatively speaking, and there's an operational plan that's taking shape for people to read. What do you hope that parents and students take from that? Not so much about the specifics, but what do you hope they understand about this place once they see that plan?
I want them to have an understanding that we followed a great process, and we had great input, and we had the best minds around the table. We leaned into our healthcare strategy and our healthcare vision, and our dean of the College of Medicine, our dean of public health, and we trusted the expertise that we have around the table within that process. 2, that it's a plan based on best available information. Because I can assure you one thing, the plan's going to change. And so that is going to be written in such a way, and we're going to have a leadership team focused around it, Jay, that allows us to get to step 3 or the third thing I wanted to share. We're going to have to pivot. We're going to have to adjust. And we're going to have a process that is in some ways cyclical, that we can have look-ins. Just because we said it was going to be X June 15th, if the world changes on July 1st or July 15th or August 1st or December 1st, that we can pivot to that, because we followed this process and we looked at so many different permutations that we can take, okay, you remember that, Cody? We can go to that part of the plan. We didn't use that now, but we talked about it. So we're going to go get that part of the plan. That's in any type of incident management system, the more pre-planning you can do to make the decisions that you have to make in 12 hours better, based on data, based on information, based on previous discussion, that's success. Could I assure you what plan we come out with is going to have to adjust and pivot as we go throughout this. Who would have thought that we're, almost 2 months in, Jay? About 7 weeks into this? Who would have thought we would be where we are today? Now, I'll also say one thing. We're a day closer to getting out of it, too. And that's how we have to think about it as well, as we're closer to therapies or closer to a vaccine or to an environment that we're better positioned to respond to. So those are the kind of things that I would hope, that I believe, not only hope, but I believe people will see within our process, and more importantly, within our outcome.
A day closer to getting out of it is an optimism that I greatly appreciate. So, Dr. Monday, is there anything that we haven't touched on or asked about that you want to point out?
No, I think we're in good shape, Cody. I appreciate the good conversation with both you, Jay and Cody. I think I am framed by one thing. I'm framed by this idea of we have to get to a safe and reinvented normal. So we're a day closer to being out of this, but we're a day closer to having that residential experience, maybe different than what it was before. Maybe it's at a census that we weren't at before, and I mean lower, not larger. And maybe it takes us a while to scale back to quote unquote fully operational. But I don't think it's going to be better in January, y'all. I don't know what makes it better in the spring than the fall. We don't have enough data to say that. So we have to create something that's robust, that's real, and that we can trust to produce an outcome that's in the best interest of our students, our faculty and staff, and all the other constituencies we serve. And then that's the outcome that we need and that we're actually going to achieve as well.
All right. Well, the concept papers will be going out, circulated among campus for that input. We look forward to that and the conversation that will come out of that. So, Dr. Eric Monday, thank you so much for being with us. We greatly appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing how this all takes shape and develops.
Thank you all.
Thank you.